This city is known for having some of the highest living standards in Brazil, but what are their sports venues like? Surely that's more important. Let's check out the stadiums and arenas of Curitiba, Brazil. Estadio Couto Pereira is home to the city's namesake club. It opened way back in 1932 as Estadio Belfor Duarte, named after one of the founders of the first ever Brazilian football club that was comprised of Brazilians rather than Angloids, working for the railway companies or whatever. Belfort also seemed to be an all-round good guy. He even once called attention to a penalty he had committed that the ref didn't see. Nowadays the opposite occurs. Sadly, he was murdered at the age of 35, seemingly due to a land dispute. So it is kind of unfortunate that the stadium's not named after him anymore. It was changed to Couto Pereira in 1977. He was a former president of this club. Anyway, this is a nice ground, with an interesting array of stands, one of which was modified significantly in a renovation about a decade ago. At the ends there's a triple-tiered curva, as they would call it in Italy. And to top it all off, there's a decent skyline backdrop. Ginasio do Taruma. This humble little building is actually the largest arena in the city, which is a little bit... Oh, I thought they were all naked for a second. You can tell they are clothed because it would be unlikely to see such a large group of people in Brazil that all have the exact same skin colour. This venue was having some structural issues, so in 2013, it underwent a renovation that was completed in 2017. It gained this nice wooden roof. I mean, there was a roof beforehand and it did look almost identical, but this is a new one. I also quite like the wooden court itself. I believe it's made of ipé wood. The ipé tree is even more beautiful when it's in tree form rather than floor form. Come to think of it, that's probably true with most trees. Over the road is Estadio Pinheirao, which was built in 1985 and abandoned in 2007, largely due to financial issues. 22 years is a very short lifespan. Even an NFL stadium lasts longer than that. It was once home to all the big clubs in town, although Piranha were the only club that played here permanently. They now play at another ground that we'll get to in a minute. This will most likely be demolished and housing will be built in its place. If they don't get around to that in the next few years, the stadium will have been abandoned longer than it was used in the first place. Ligga Arena. The original stadium was built back in 1913, which would make it the oldest stadium in the city. However, it was mostly demolished in the late 90s, so I don't think we can call it the oldest. However, it is the largest in the city, and that is probably the bigger flex. It was also the first stadium in South America to feature a retractable roof. After the demolition works, the stadium was rebuilt in phases. This iteration of the stadium was completed in 2014, in time for the 2014 World Cup in 2014. That was in 2014. The first game at the new stadium was held before the construction workers had even finished installing all the seats. They were keen to move in early, and I can understand why. I feel the same way about visiting stadiums as a spectator. If you get there early enough, you can see some exciting lawnmower action, which for me is the highlight of the day.
Oh, did you see that? Did you see that? Forget about the Cruyff turn. The John Deere turn's where it's at.
You know, you're dead right, Jimmy. It's like poetry in motion. We've come a long way from cutting grass with a scythe we have.
A long bloody way indeed, David.
The field is artificial, but there is a good reason for it. The stadium did initially have a natural grass field, but it was very expensive and difficult to maintain due to the fact that there's a river that flows underneath the ground and a lack of direct sunlight flowing onto the field itself. It is still very bright and airy in here, whether the roof is closed or not. Estadio Durival Britto e Silva, more commonly known as Vila Capanema. It might be hard to believe given how primitive it is compared to the one we just saw, but this too hosted matches at the World Cup. It's just that it was the 1950 World Cup. Surprisingly, it could hold just 10,000 spectators back then, and that's with looser safety standards than we have today, so it must have been really small. The final of that World Cup was attended by over 170,000 spectators at the American R. You wouldn't see such a large discrepancy between stadium sizes at World Cups today. Probably because even a matchup like Costa Rica versus New Zealand can attract a huge crowd. This ground's most distinctive aspect is that it appears to have been sliced by the road that it backs onto, which suggests that it is otherwise not all that distinctive. Estadio Otoncola Queiroz, also known as Villa Olímpica, is used by Piranha's youth teams. Given the similarity with the last stadium, you might be wondering why this place even needed to exist in the first place. Well, it was actually home to another club, which was one of the two clubs that merged to form Piranha Club. Piranha did actually try to sell the stadium a while back, but for some legal reasons they were unable to. It is really annoying not to be able to sell an asset that you have. Personally, I made a big mistake purchasing 1,000 fax machines expecting them to appreciate in value. Now I can't give them away. I thought he would be a trustworthy fax machine salesman because his name was Fairfax. They also had plans to build a world-class stadium in this area, but it never eventuated, obviously. This one is looking pretty derelict, to be honest. Honourable mentions now. Estadio Municipal de Pinheirao is probably the only other ground worth mentioning, really. Wow. I guess that's the guy that Oprah Winfrey hires to do her grocery shopping? Or is she thin now? It's hard to keep track, I don't know. Anyway, there's not much to say about this basic bitch of a ground. So there you have it. It was pretty easy to pick a favourite out of this bunch. Ligga Arena is clearly a cut above the rest. Consider subscribing if you're new around here. There are more South American cities to come. Thanks for watching, have a good one.